DJ the Suit Stout and Frank Garcia here for our good friends over at Neogenics, sponsor of the program. And Frank, we've seen some dominant performances in the NCAA tournament right now, but man.
I mean, speak of dominating, DJ, Neogenics is dominating the field. They are taking care of business here in North Carolina, in Charlotte, in this region. And I tell you, they've worked on me. They've helped me out. Makes me feel like a new man. The stem cell therapy that they give is absolutely the best in the business. And that's the reason why they are the most dominant force in Charlotte.
Yeah, Charlotte's most trusted when it comes to stem cell and regenerative therapy. Any joint pain you have, whether it be your knee, your ankle, your elbow, your neck, your back, they've got you covered. No surgery, no downtime. Our boy Nico over there and Dr. A take care of it. We've sent about 15, 16 athletes over there, from you to Matt Doherty to Thomas Davis to Harold Varner Jr. to many of them.
Turns me from a 50-year-old into a 30-year-old.
Yeah, I've had it on my elbow and my shoulder, and they do a great job. And, you know, when Neogenics started here, they started with one clinic, and we're the small guy on the block going up against some of these big boys, and these big boys just keep closing their doors because these other stem cell companies, you don't see a real doctor. They don't use imaging equipment. It's kind of a hit or miss, and they're happy to take your money.
They couldn't handle the heat.
They couldn't handle the press, the full court St. John's press.
Right.
And Neogenics does it the right way every day. If you haven't checked them out, they have 2 locations now. They have one in the Ballantyne area here in Charlotte and one up at Lake Norman off of exit 28. Again, any joint pains you have, listen, the leaves are turning green. The weather's getting nice. Whether it's picking up your grandkids, whatever it is, going to the gym, now's the time to get those nagging joint pains taken care of. And Neogenics is the place to do it. And again, thank you to all those guys. It's been a big week. When I used to work with another client, when they would run somebody out of business, they would put a headstone on stage.
They feel like the Miami team of the 90s when you go into the Orange Bowl and you see all the gravestones of all the teams that they have beat. That's Neogenics. They're going to have to start compiling headstones to all the competition they're leaving in the dust.
No doubt. You can give them a call today at 704-727-6551. That's 704-727-6551. Or check them out online at neogenixstemcells.com. neogenixstemcells.com. Trust me, there's a reason why they're Charlotte's most trusted, and now North Carolina's most trusted. Soon to be opening clinics in other areas in North Carolina that we'll talk about on another day. But congrats to them for the continued success. Any nagging joint pains, go check them out.
This is Suit Up Sports.
Suit Up Sports.
Where opinions are as sharp as a tailored suit. No fluff, no gimmicks, just unfiltered, hard-hitting takes on sports and a whole lot more. It's time to suit up. Now here's your host, DJ the Suit Stout.
Sports. I'm DJ the Suit Stout, along with 10-year NFL vet Frank Garcia. Frank, how you feeling today, brother?
You know what? A little groggy, a little disappointed, a little in shock still. Some really good games over the weekend, but you know, the one that finished it for me and you and a lot of fans out there, it's just, you know, everybody's sitting there, and I'm sure we're going to discuss it to nauseum today and live it, but just feeling a little disappointed, I guess. And you know, but other than that, everything's great. Looking forward to the show and, you know, getting back and doing this and talking about some other good games and some positive things. But gosh, what a bummer last night.
Yeah, yesterday was a bad sports day for me, man. My Mets lose in extra innings on a base running error, and then the Hornets get waxed by the Celtics, although I thought that was going to probably happen. And then Duke up 19. I'm at the Hornet game in a suite with a bunch of our clients. We're watching the Duke game and we're rolling, and everybody slapped me on the back. You're going to the Final Four. You're going to the Final Four. And then all of a sudden, UConn starts creeping, and then they keep creeping, and we keep turning the ball over. And then they start hitting shots, and then we turn the ball over, and it ends up setting up what will go down as one of the biggest shots in the history of the NCAA tournament. And it's kind of ironic that it happened in a UConn Duke game.
Against UConn.
Yeah, because, you know, Duke has had some of the best.
Leitner shot.
Leitner against UConn. People forget that one too, when we beat them in the tournament. And, you know, it's amazing because in this day and age, when so many teams are counting on true freshmen, you expect inexperience to play a role, right?
At some point.
And when you look at Duke over their last 4 losses, right? So the 3 losses they had this year, they lost by a combined 5 points. And then last year, their last loss was against Houston in the NCAA tournament. All 4 of those losses, they had 15 or more point leads. including this year against North Carolina when they had a 17-point lead. Texas Tech at home had a 15-point lead. And then yesterday had a 19-point lead. And so I was getting in this debate, and then, at the gym this morning, I'm tired of seeing that shot, but it's on every TV in the gym, and I'm watching, and inexperience to me. A lot of people want to talk about the coaching. I think there's definitely something to be said there, but to me, the biggest issue is just inexperience. I made this example to you before the show. If Duke had Arizona's point guard, who's a senior, who's a, gutsy, great point guard with a lot of experience, he holds the ball. If Foster was in the game there, and they haven't said it, but Foster only played 14 minutes yesterday, so everyone's kind of guessing his foot must have been bothering him because after the game he had what the game before that, and for him to only play 14 minutes and not being at the end of the game.
I can tell you, having had that injury, and for what he did the 2 nights before that, to get into the Elite Eight was absolutely incredible.
Sure was.
Coming off of an injury of that magnitude, that that broken foot, where you have no ability to plant, you're not going to have any explosiveness. Everything you do, it's going to be really kind of flat-footed, because if you roll it a little bit, it's going to crack and pop, and it feels like that every single time you run or even walk. So for him to go out there and have that type of gutsy performance, I got to believe that had some impact and carryover into this game, which is the reason why UConn was, in my opinion, able to come back, because the full court press, when Boozer was at the point, or they try to mix it up a little bit and put in, like they did earlier against Siena, and rotate what Boozer was going to bring the ball up. It takes them out of their entire offense. And they took a playbook, a piece of play right out of the playbook of other teams and how they pressured us, whether it's North Carolina when they beat us, whether it was Siena and them giving us all they had with their 5 starters and pushing us to the
St. John's.
St. John's, when Boozer's in the game bringing it up, it's pressure. As soon as Foster comes in, it's back up, let's play defense, and that's when the Duke offense was going to be its best, and then they were a little bit more secure. So you mentioned the word inexperience, right? And having freshmen is always going to bring the potential of doing that. But I'll also offer this. I was listening to Scheyer's press conference after it. He goes, "That's the first time I've ever been in that situation." Right? It's the first time I've ever been in that situation. So if you've never been in that situation, how do you prepare for that situation? Right? You learn and you grow, or you take in on what other coaches have given you, right? Or what you've been through as a coach. If you've never played in a big game, you've never played in a big game until you do, right? And that moment, you've never had that moment. So it'll be interesting to see moving forward, how they handle that, because I do think that they improved on inbounding the ball at least
100%
from last year, when they were the first team in history to blow a lead at that magnitude with that time left, and they also, again, unfortunately, become the first team in history as a 1 seed to take a 15-point lead into the game, 131-0. There's been 131 1 seeds with a 15-point lead going into halftime that lost the game. Now that's 131-1, and Duke is the carrier of that, the bearer of that unfortunate torch.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that I argue with folks on all the time, and you and I are on text strands with Nico and Charlie and other people, and we talk about it. But in this day and age of social media, I really do think that people really don't put enough credit on experience. I don't think it gets enough credit, because we'll talk about the Hornets a little bit later, but in the, Scheyer's been doing this for 4 years, and he's on a 4-year run that no one has ever done before.
He has the best record of any first-year coach in the last 3 years of anybody, including Wooden, including Kay, including Smith, all the greats before him. His winning percentage and record is greater than everybody. So it's impossible to call him a bad coach. He's a young coach.
He needs experience. And again, we talked about this before the show. if Caden Boozer just holds the ball,
Mhm.
that was a hell of an inbound play.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it would have been exactly what you wanted. He gets the ball, he holds it, he goes to the free throw line, he makes one of two at least. You can't pointer, but whether he told whoever got the ball up there, if it was going to be Boozer to hold the ball, who knows? Could he have called a timeout right away? Yeah, he could. They did have a timeout. So there are some things like that. But, again, and you alluded to it, experience is a huge factor. And let me give you some numbers that really surprised me. So Scheyer now has just finished his 4th year coaching, right? He's been the most successful guy, as you just said, in that amount of years. How many years do you think it took Coach K to win his first championship?
Oh gosh, I'm sorry. I'm gonna guess 9, 10,
16.
16.
How many years do you think it took John Wooden to win his first one?
Oh gosh, I mean, he had some great players, and basketball's a lot different back then. But I'd say 9 or 10 as well.
16.
Wow.
Bill Self, 12. John Thompson, who had all those great Georgetown teams, 12.
Yeah.
So this is not something that most coaches, in 4 years now. You look at Golden from Florida, who did it last year. I think he's the youngest coach to do it. But it takes time, and it's because it takes experience, and especially in this day and age where you basically have a new team every year, and you're basically counting on freshmen every year now. The team, like, now look at UConn. I mean, I
can completely agree with what you're saying and understand. And even in the professional ranks, DJ, when you see a young team that is stepping into the pressure of what those playoffs are in a series when it's game 6 or game 7, and there's going to be a growing pain that goes with it. And I'm not making excuses, for Duke by any stretch of the imagination or any other team that goes through that. But the reality of it is that when you have young players that have never experienced that type of pressure, right, you're going to handle it differently. And it takes a year or two. I remember my rookie season coming into the NFL, starting my first game, and I have Bruce Smith across from me. And damn, if he didn't just, blow by me, and I'm like, where the hell did he go, right? Things happen so quickly.
Yep. And
as a player, right, and coach, we want our players to play with a sense of urgency, right? We try to teach that sense of urgency. You got to have that in practice, whatever it is. You got to have that sense of urgency. And that's going to show that you're prepared and you're aware and you know of all the situations that are going on versus panic, right? And the difference between those two is panic is chaos. I don't know how to respond. I make mistakes. It's based on those things. And that was the difference between young Frank and veteran Frank, is that as a veteran, I could play with a sense of urgency, expecting the game to be quick, and and eventually it slows down. When you're a rookie going in a situation like that, in that kind of moment, things are going to be going 100 miles an hour, and you're just going to panic, right? And when you panic, you throw up all over yourself. When you throw up all yourself, bad things happen, like UConn getting the ball, having some time, making a play, and finding the open guy to drill a 3. And, that's the difference. And I think that's where I think Scheyer could learn and grow and take some of that panic away from those young players. If he's going to continue to recruit one and dones or freshmen coming in, high school seniors going to be freshmen that are very talented players, he's got to do a better job of game management, situational plays, things of that nature, because
and the game
and inbound passes, for example, last year was huge.
Yeah.
And then there was times this year where like, do we even practice?
Well, we did see him against St. John's, because you can't replicate that in practice. We did see after that initial 10 minutes, we did see his adjustments and the team settle down. And then
you can absolutely replicate that in practice.
Well, not like the way St. John's plays it, because we don't have those kind of freaking beasts on.
Well, you put your starters or whoever it is, right? You're not going to have the same level of athlete,
right,
that is going to move as quickly.
18,000 people cheering for him, so it's a little different. But you did see Scheyer make adjustments there. So, like I said, I put a lot of this on experience. And then on the flip side, let's look at UConn. You got a coach who's won 2 national championships in the last 3 years. He's been in every big game you can think of.
That's the one thing we've said about UConn and their coach
is that they've been there and they've done it.
They're going to fight,
and they're going to fight
tooth and nail till the very end.
Yep.
Right. And that brings me back to a point. I wanted to bring this up. There are critical moments in every game, in every half. Right. In the NBA, you got 4 quarters. The last 2 minutes of every quarter are critical moments for that quarter to take momentum into the next quarter after you go into a timeout, right? Halftime, big last 2-3 minutes of halftime before
Finish
you go
strong.
in, finish strong. Let's go in there with some momentum. The end of the game, the last 5 minutes in the NBA game is usually where teams start playing hard, especially regular season. Playoffs, a little bit different, probably be more critical towards the 2 minutes. There's no difference when you're playing a team that's very talented, that's going to fight tooth and nail, regardless of what the lead is. And Duke, before halftime, that last 35, 40 seconds of that half, I don't know if you remember it, but it was so nonchalant.
Mm-hmm.
And our big guy, they had 10 seconds left in the clock, and they kind of just paused. They're up 15, really didn't but they had an opportunity to go up 17 or 18 points and really put the nail into them and end that half with positive momentum and eliminate the chance of them coming back, or at least slow it down but much more. But our big guy sits on the top of the key, just kind of waits, holds, and then shoots a 3-point shot that has no chance of going in because he's like 0 of 900 for doing those things. And it was just like you gave up at halftime going in. You didn't get any momentum. I thought to myself, I swear to you I did. I was like, ooh, that last set or those last couple of possessions may come back and haunt us.
Yeah, well, we were up 19 and UConn got it down to 15 at halftime.
That's right.
And then in the second half, they
came out on fire.
And again, that's experience. Hurley never lost faith that they would get back in the game. And then even the last play of the game, again, talking about experience, Caravan, who's a senior at UConn, he has the most wins of any UConn basketball player in history at that program. He hit the three-pointer to put them into this game. This game, he didn't shoot the ball well. I think he was 1 for 5. But when Boozer turned the ball over, the ball was thrown to Caravan. A freshman would have thought they needed to get the shot up
and make it now and make something happen to tie the game or win the game.
But he knew he had a little time, and he knew that he had a guy wide open.
He was playing with a sense of urgency and didn't panic.
And he knew Mullins was right there. Mullins, by the way, was 1 for 5 on the game, 1 3-pointer. That was that one. In the tournament, I think he was, I want to say 5 for 25. He was 0 for 8 from 3 points against Furman in their first game. So this kid's a great shooter. So don't get me wrong, but he had been awful from 3-point land in this tournament. But when the game's on the line and he got to step into it wide open, Evans didn't even get a hand up.
He was shooting too close. Apparently.
I
mean, to step back.
That was from the logo. And so I give UConn a lot of credit. There was a question on one of the shows I was watching this morning. Do you blame Duke more for choking, or do you give UConn credit? And some of the folks were saying I give UConn both credit.
Both can happen.
I think it's both. Jay Williams, who played at Duke, wanted to blame Duke because he just said you can't blow that big of a lead. And I think you're right. I think there's both. But I give a lot of credit to UConn for staying in there and fighting. And I mean, even at the end of the game, when Reed, who was unstoppable most of that game, 26 points, but when he missed the front end of that 1-and-1, you're thinking, okay.
I will say both can be true.
Yeah.
That question, DJ. But I will say I would, if I'm leaning one way, it would be more towards Duke, right? 131-0 with that type of lead.
Right.
You were dominating in the first half. You weren't in foul trouble in the second half. I mean, early on in the first 5 minutes, 6 minutes of the game, Duke piled up like 6 fouls, right away versus 1. And it kind of, spread out the fouls from the first half because we dominated the first half in that sort of fashion. UConn came out and they were still aggressive. They attacked the basket, the rim, and they got their fouls called. Give them credit for that. But you also say, where's the sense of urgency, in those moments?
Put your foot on the throat.
Where's the sense of urgency?
Yeah.
And that is the difference between the veteran players, the assassins that have been there, knowing that this is all or nothing for these guys.
Yeah.
There's some seniors over there that would, cut their arm off to go out there and win this game and hand it to somebody and say, if that's what it's going to take to win, that's what we'll do. And I promise you they feel that way.
Yeah. Right.
And Duke just hadn't been in that moment in those situations and lost their sense of urgency.
Yeah.
And that turned into panic at the end of the game.
And UConn missed 18 of their first 19 3-pointers, but made the one that counted. And I want to say this before we move on to the other games, because there were some other great games. I feel awful for Caden Boozer because until that turnover, he was having his best game as a collegiate athlete. He had 15 points. He was 4 for 5, 1 for 1 from 3, 6 for 6 free throws. He had 5 rebounds, 6 assists. The kid had a great game. And now he's going to be remembered because he didn't hold on to the ball. And again, if he gets the pass over top, game's over. We had a guy wide open under the basket, but it happened, and you got to give UConn credit. And I'll tell you this much: moving on to the next round, UConn's already played Illinois once this year, and they beat them. I would not want to mess with UConn, and Michigan, Arizona is a whole different ball game. And again, we'll talk about that.
UConn, Illinois. I think that
UConn's a 1.5 point favorite as of now.
I don't think that's.
Or excuse me, they're getting 1.5.
I think UConn is a better team than Illinois.
Oh, I agree.
Right?
Illinois can score with the best of them.
They can shoot. They're the top scoring team in
Yep.
college basketball.
They can
Number
score.
one, they're going to light up threes all day long. But UConn has the athletes to be able to cover the perimeter. It's going to come down to their big guy, down low. Is he able to get his position and score? And do they play great defense? The other game, Arizona, Michigan. Oh my God! I mean, that really should be. Even if Duke was still left, I would feel like the winner of that game is going to win the national championship. The only hope that that the other side might have is they beat themselves up so badly that they're just exhausted by the time Monday rolls around. Because you talk about two teams that have dominated this tournament. There hasn't been anybody more dominant than what Arizona has done. They're averaging like 15, 16 point win differential.
Mm-hmm.
And after the last two, performances of Michigan, going out and they're blowing out Tennessee late in the game, winning by double digits. And then earlier, the game before that, also, winning by 30. I mean, they have walked themselves right over the top of every opponent they've played. And it's like two armies marching down the path, knowing that they're on a collision course, and here they come to the hill, and there they are.
Yeah.
Right? And that's where it's at right now. They both are looking at each other and realizing, okay, who's gonna nut up and who's gonna go out there and impose their will, because they're both gonna be swinging.
Yeah.
It's gonna be like a true heavyweight fight, and I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, I do think both these games on Saturday are going to be great. And let's start with Illinois and UConn. We just talked about UConn quite a bit. Illinois, for those of you who hadn't watched them all year long, can score with the best of them. They got 3-point shooting everywhere. They're a team that really epitomizes bringing these European pros in. I think they've got 3 European pros on their team that played pros over in Europe, 16, 17, 18, 19 years old, brought them over to Illinois. So they have experience on a big stage, not this stage necessarily, but and they
arguably have one of the best shooters in college basketball with Wagler. I mean, the guy can light it up. So, and the European players that they have are just going to camp out. Yeah,
I mean, he had 24 last game.
I mean, they can sit up there and light up with the best of them. And, it's interesting you bring that up. We talked about it a little bit last week, with the European players and the influx they've had and, the difference they've made in college basketball. And, Illinois, Purdue, Wisconsin, Iowa, all the teams that have these European players and these coaches that are going to just, maybe have a better feel for, that outside game where you're bringing in, it's European basketball, really is what it is. So they're used to playing at the high levels over there as professionals. They're coming in as juniors and seniors. So when they get to these moments, it's not going to faze them. Yeah.
And here's the thing, Duke, we've talked about this too with Duke. Boozer, we knew was going to get his 25 points every game, right? But we didn't know who else was going to help. And Evans, for instance, against UConn yesterday, was 2 of 6 for shooting for 7 points. You're not going to win if you're Duke many games, and they almost pulled it out. But with Illinois, they're not going to have a problem scoring. So UConn can't afford to have a game where they come out and miss their first 18 3-pointers. They're going to have to keep up with them. Now, so UConn, Illinois brings up, really contrasting styles where Illinois can score with the best of them, great 3-point shooting, great freshman point guard, as you mentioned, in Wagler. UConn, streaky 3-point shooting, but feisty defense are going to fight. And so it'll be interesting to see who controls the tempo of that game.
Yeah. And that's, I don't remember where I heard this. And it was a very famous announcer, a guy that obviously had some experience, playing the game, coaching the game. And what they said is that when you don't have a point guard, it's hard to dictate pace, right? When you have good point guards, it's a lot easier to be able to slow the game down or speed the game up. When you look at this Illinois and UConn game, Illinois is going to jack the ball up from 3-pointers, and they have multiple guys that can do it, including their bigs. So you're going to have to guard the perimeter. But do you want to get in that type of game where you're going to up and down tempo and give them multiple opportunities with rebounds or misses to be able to do that. UConn, if they want to have a chance to win this game, DJ, they're going to have to slow the ball down. And even after a missed shot where they have a chance to run, you might want to think about walking it up, right? And just maximizing your big and your offensive sets and minimizing what their opportunities are going to be to muddy this game up, to slow them down, because Illinois could easily go out and score 90 points with the rate that they shoot the three-pointers from, because they're going to keep jacking them up. They remind me of that team, back in the day when from California, that just all they did was
Loyola
Marymount. They ran up and down the court, and they lived by the three, and they died by the three. I think they lost at UNLV or whoever it was way back in the day. But they would up and down, and they were just lighting threes up and jacking them up, and if they went in, they went in. But that was really the first type of team that played in that style. More teams are doing that now, especially with the analytics that are available to teams. They were ahead of the curve, but Illinois, they can flat out light it up. But if you can slow the game down, slow the tempo down, I think you might have a chance if you're UConn to get it to those final minutes where they have a chance to go and take over and hit a big shot.
Yeah, I think that should be a good game. Again, you would think UConn shoots the ball better this time than they did against Duke. And then the next game, Arizona, Michigan, we talked about it a little while ago. Arizona, to me, has probably been the best team all year. I remember watching them beat UConn at UConn, although UConn didn't have two of their best players that game. I saw them win, late against UCLA, and then they had a little dip when they had some injuries. Pete was out for a while. They're a great freshman who had 20 points last game. And then Michigan, who, Michigan does not lack anything. They've got great size. They got the best size left in the tournament.
I would say that them and Arizona are equal, because Pete is a guy very similar to Boozer. Duke, that was one of their advantages when they played Michigan, is they could match them eye to eye, right? And the biggest difference for Michigan is they weren't hitting shots. Defense was being played. Duke inserted their will on the defensive side, and Boozer took over that game and became, really the college player, maybe the college player of the year, because of the way he played in that game.
Yeah, he will be. And with Michigan, first of all, Dusty May, their coach, if you remember a few years ago, took Florida Atlantic all the way and then gets the Michigan job and has just done an outstanding job. And when you were talking about guard play earlier and how I feel that the biggest thing that Duke has lacked the last two seasons is a great point guard. When you look at the four teams left, it's the three teams with the best point guards are without a doubt Illinois with Wagler, Arizona with Bradley, the senior, and then Michigan, Kadu, we could say all we want about him. He left Carolina after some ups and downs, but he's had a really good season for Michigan. He had 10 assists against Tennessee. Still doesn't shoot the ball as consistent as he would probably like, but they've got shooters, on that team where he really didn't have to. And then you got Lindenborg, who's just unbelievable for Michigan. This kid, could have went pro last year, probably was going to be a late first-round pick, decided to transfer to Michigan, get paid. And he's the real deal, man. Every time I watch him play, I haven't figured out in my head who he reminds me of. But
you talking about Lindenborg?
Lindenborg for Michigan. I haven't figured out who he reminds me of, but every time I watch him play, I think to myself, that guy would look great in a Hornets uniform, because he plays that type of game. He's hustling. He plays defense. He can score. He's a great leader. So that game in itself should just be unbelievable.
No doubt about it. I mean, I've watched a lot of Arizona, this year, almost as much as I've watched them play Duke. You get the late night games, nothing going on, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. They're playing, the games, and they have just dominated over the last half of the season. They've blown everybody out. Michigan had little struggles, coming into the tournament. They found their niche. They played more with a sense of urgency. They weren't as careless as what they were, in their tournament, and they found themselves a little bit. The toughness that they play with. When that, again, going back to that Duke game, watching that to me reminded me, and I think I texted our little chain. This reminds me of a Final Four match.
Yeah.
All right. And, these are two heavyweights, going at it. And, up in Madison Square Garden, Duke got the better of them in that game, but it was tooth and nail, back and forth, blow for blow. And I feel like that's the way this Arizona-Michigan game is going to be. But, for Arizona, they got two difference makers. Their center, who's 7'2", that can go out there and control the paint. And matchup with Michigan, they have their big guy as well. But when you look at lineups and you look at matchups, to me, even going back to some of the games that we've watched, it all comes down to matchups. I don't care if it's the Hornets playing on a on a Thursday night or one of these NBA or one of these college games. The guys you have on the court to create what type of matchup you're looking for, factors into it, and being able to match up with them also does. Both of these teams can match up with anybody because they have multiple players that can come off the bench. They can go big, they can play small, or they can dictate the tempo, right? You're going to have to match me with my big lineup out here, and you're going to have to go size for size. Not everybody's able to do that in college basketball. So these two teams can. And the guy that to me is going to be the difference in this game, because I think he's been an incredible player. And you mentioned the guy from Michigan that you think would look great in a Hornets uniform. I think this guy would equally look as good. Koa Pete.
Oh, he's a stud.
I mean, he has been Boozer, as good, if not better in certain situations. And I know it helps a little bit when you have a point guard that can control the tempo in Bradley, because you look at Bradley on the court, he's the fastest guy out there. Your eyes are going to change.
And he's always in control, man.
He has great handles. He has, he makes good decisions, but, he can take over a game. And defensively, sometimes he gets into a little foul trouble because he can reach and, be aggressive. But he's never out of a play, because watch against elite point guards, even on fast breaks, when he goes, it looks like he's running 4-2 and everybody else is running 5 flat.
Yeah,
right?
and Pete, if you remember early in the season when Arizona was just rolling everybody, Pete, true freshman, was playing outstanding. Then he got hurt, and that's when Arizona started struggling a little bit. And then when he came back, it took him a while to get going again. After the first 10 games of the season, you couldn't look at an NBA mock draft without seeing him in the top 10. I think me and you even talked about it. And a lot of them had him going to the Hornets, but at the time they thought the Hornets would be picking top 10, which now it would take a miraculous, luck. But now you see what that kid can do. And he's athletic. He can score. He can shoot. He's tough inside. To me, he's a more athletic Boozer, to be quite honest with you. I don't know if he's as strong around the basket as Boozer is, but he's pretty damn strong.
That was a great matchup when those two played, and it was really loose. That's why when watching those two go back and forth at each other, not just offensively but defensively, it was a heavyweight fight. And ultimately, I think Duke wore them out because if they hit more shots on the outside, but it was a back and forth game just like that. Yeah.
So we'll make our picks at the end of the show for the rest of the Final Four. Let's move on now. I want to jump into the Hornets, because we just talked about them for a second there. In the midst of a great run, we have a 7-game homestand. We opened up the stand, winning the first, I think 5, right? 4 or 5. And then we get Philadelphia and Boston back-to-back this weekend. Philly gets healthy for the first time this year. They have Paul George, Embiid, they're the team that we're fighting with to jump up a spot in the playoffs. And we come out, we played great.
We had a 15-point lead in that game in the first half. Looked like they came. I was at the game, and I was up close and personal. And the fans, the city, the atmosphere, the ambiance of that game reminded me of a playoff game, and I was sitting with one of my best friends, Joe, in his seats. Thank you, Joe. Great seats, right? 3 rows up from the court, right there in the middle of the court. And, talking to him, I was like, have you ever been? He'd never been to a playoff game. And I said, this is probably on a scale of 1 to 10, a 7 of a playoff game, but there's no experience like an NBA playoff game where you have 2 teams and your entire city is behind it, and you can feel the emotions and the passion, when there's a foul called, people jumping up out of their seats.
Oh yeah.
The level of the arena, gets louder. Everybody is behind, you as a team. And that's the way it felt. And it hadn't felt like that in a long time for the Hornets. And unfortunately, they had too much scoring power. They didn't have an answer for Embiid.
Nope.
And they didn't have an answer for the point guard that just took over.
Well, Maxey
he's in
the MVP. He won't get it, but he's in the conversation.
And you can see why.
Oh, he's
very
unbelievable.
Similar to what I said about Bradley for Arizona. He is the most gifted athlete, on the court. The way that he can get up, the way he gets up and down the court, the way he handles the ball, the way he finishes at the basket. We didn't have an answer for him defensively, and he took over that game. And then you got George on the outside, that
Who just came back.
Who's just sitting there and just salivating at the bit to just make his presence felt, and he did.
He sure did.
And ultimately, they just had too much firepower in those crucial minutes, at the end of that game when they took over. And
again, to me, it all goes back to experience. With the Panthers this year, they got in the playoffs. Whether you want to say they backed in or whatever, they got in the playoffs. And when we talked about them being there, I said, look, this is another hurdle. And even if they lose, which they almost won, it's at least the experience they're going to get of being in a playoff game against a team that's won the Super Bowl within the last 5 years. Mm-hmm. And that experience is going to help them moving forward. You've got to take your lumps to get there. That Philadelphia game, you nailed it. I mean, it was like a playoff game, and we came out and we approached it like a playoff game. But in those playoff games, things are done differently. Number one, your superstars are going to take over. In Philadelphia, we had no answer for Embiid, like you said. Maxey was unbelievable. George is unbelievable. And then at the end of games, the things slow down a little bit, and the teams with experience have been there and they understand how the flow of the game.
And not just the players though, DJ, it's the coaching staff too.
Well, the refereeing too.
And that's a factor. That's a factor.
No question.
Regardless of what,
question.
The big market city teams are going to get the majority of the calls. When you have an Embiid out there. Embiid got fouled 3 times in those crucial minutes where, we're all yelling in the crowd, challenge it. Nobody touched him, but he falls on the ground. It's going to be called
more than LeBron does.
It's going to be called the foul. But the difference is in those 2 games is Philadelphia's stars shine the brightest in those crucial minutes where Melo, and I'm not going to blame Melo because he has been phenomenal and spectacular, but when the pressure is on, it's almost like he feels the need to take over and win the game. And sometimes that's good when you're hot and you're streaky and you're making shots, but you can also very easily shoot your team right out of the game. And in that game in particular, that's what happened. You had Miller, who had 29 points, but he had 22 of those in the first half. He was on fire, took over the game. Knipple had his regular night. He was 50% from 3. You had Grant Williams in the game, which a lot of people really didn't understand of why, because he was the matchup, against Embiid for the. It's
because he's the only guy we had that's strong enough to try to even push him around. I mean, I love Moose, but Grant's the only guy that's got enough muscle on that team to try to push a big man around.
But the problem is with Williams in that game in particular is that they were leaving him unguarded. And at times he can make the 3-point shot, and at times he can't. But they gambled on him missing, and he didn't hit the shots when it counted, down the stretch. And there was no answer for a guy like Embiid. But when you have a 7'2" guy, on the court,
that's 280, can shoot 3-pointers,
and can do it all, right? I mean, it's gonna be a tough matchup for anybody, and that's why Philadelphia is going to be a tough out if he plays that way and he gets the calls. But I'm waiting for the time as a lifelong Suns fan, and you're a lifelong Hornets fan. I've lived here longer than I did, in Phoenix, but to root for a basketball team where it feels like we get the benefit of the calls, right?
Yeah.
Because
some people are going to look at you right now and go, "Well, you are a Duke fan."
And I'm not going to disagree. There's some.
If you're a Duke or Carolina fan, you do have to agree. We do get the benefit of some calls.
We have benefited from that as that fan base, but as much as we benefited in college basketball, we've not benefited in the NBA.
Definitely not with the Hornets. And against the Celtics last night, again, I was at that game. I knew that was going to be a bloodbath for 2 reasons. Number one, I knew that we left it all on the court against Philadelphia to turn around the next night and play a Celtics team, which I think is going to win the East and maybe the whole damn thing. And we just beat them by 30 in Boston. So we
didn't just beat them, we
embarrassed them. So not only were we coming in tired, they're coming in wanting to whoop our ass,
hungry.
And so I knew that was trouble. But
and getting Jason Tatum back,
correct,
was the biggest difference maker.
And Jaylen Brown didn't play last night, so Tatum said, "You know what? Let me show everybody. I can take. I'm still the man.
He still took over. Got 30. What did he get? 32.
32 points. He was unstoppable. And the one thing that does worry me a little bit with the Hornets now, and we're in the 10th spot right now. So as of right now, we will be playing at Miami in the play-in game. But we're tied with Miami, so we could flip-flop 9 or 10.
Miami plays the 76ers tonight.
Right, and we have the toughest schedule the rest of the way. We have the Nets at Nets tomorrow, which we should win that.
Just beat them.
We should beat them.
I mean, I don't like to say we should win that.
Well, but we should. If we're the team that we think we are, we should win that. Then we have the Suns at home.
And the Suns have
they're good.
They have given us fits,
but we should win that. I'm going to give us 2-0. Then we have Indiana here. They're the worst team, if not one of the worst.
I will give us that one.
Right. So
I think the other ones are going to be bloodbath dogfights.
I think that's the only three. I think that's the only three we're going to win the rest of the way, unless because then
we'll name the rest of the
then
games.
We're at Minnesota, and they're really good, and they're playing for seeding. At Boston again.
Boston may have things locked up by that.
Well, but they're in the third. They're still playing to try to move up. And then we end with the Pistons here. That's the game that maybe we get lucky on because the Pistons will have number 1 seed wrapped up by then. So maybe we can go 4-3 in those games. We're tied with Miami, so we could flip into the 9th spot, which would get us a home game in the play-in. But we also could move up. We're only a game behind Orlando. And so we could jump and get into that 8th spot, which would get us out of the play-in game, which is what we're all hoping for. We're not going to catch Philadelphia anymore. They're 3 games ahead of us. And then Atlanta, I think, is 5 games. So really what we're looking to cast, best case scenario is the 8th seed with and get up there instead of Orlando. But we got to take care of business at home, and that would give us 4 wins and 3 losses if we don't steal one of the ones on the road.
I think this can very easily be 5-2. Brooklyn Tuesday night, Phoenix Thursday night.
I'm giving them the first 3. At Minnesota, Indiana, I'm not giving us. At Boston, I'm not giving us.
Minnesota and Boston, okay, those are 2 losses, but why can't they beat Detroit?
Well, that's the last game, and you're right. Detroit.
And then they have New York after that.
Well, Detroit will have it wrapped up by then. So I think. So that could be a game.
Why not 5-2?
Could be if Detroit is wrapped up and don't play their guys.
Even if Detroit does play their guys, I think
New York will have to play though because they're fighting with Boston. So I think we're going to get their best shot at.
So that may be the.
But we could beat New York. We just beat them. We could beat New York.
That could be the first game of your playoffs.
But let me tell you what's worrying me. Here's what's worrying me. I think our boy Concanipple, who has had out of a scale of 1 to 10, a 50. The season's been incredible. But I think he's tired. He was 3 for 14 against Philadelphia last night. I think it was not too far off of that. I don't think he took 14 shots, but I thought I had it written down.
He was better than that against Philadelphia.
No, he was 3 for 14. I think he hit 2 of those were threes, I believe. But he was 3 for 14, and last night I think he had 11 points. And he looks tired to me. He's front rimming the ball a lot, right? And when guys are tired, that's normally where they miss. So hopefully getting today off. And then, it would be nice to have a blowout against a couple of these teams where he can get some rest, but he looks like he's tired. And so and Melo a little bit as well, because Melo had a 2-week stretch there where he was unstoppable. I think if he wasn't the conference player of the week, he was second. But those 2 guys in particular to me look a little tired. So hopefully getting today off of and rest and go to Brooklyn, hopefully take care of business, come home, get another day of rest, and the Suns, and then Indiana. but we got to get him some rest.
But Knipple doesn't have to be one of our scorers. He just has to be an opportunistic scorer. He has to be on the outside.
I agree with you, but
what he does for this team is way more than just score. He had 11 rebounds in that game you're talking about.
I agree with you.
I'm 4 assists.
I'm just saying that he just looks tired to me. And when, at the point of the season that we're at, and don't get me wrong, it wouldn't surprise me if he goes out tomorrow night and scores 30. I'm not saying that, but I hope that in these next 6 games, there's a few games where he can get a couple, where we're blowing somebody out and he can get some rest so he's fresh, because he just looks a little tired to me these last 2 games, and which is totally normal. Rookies, normally they hit the wall a lot earlier than this. The fact he's just now, to me, hitting it is amazing. So hopefully in these next 2 weeks before the playoffs start, he can get some time and get those legs back under him. But, listen, we said this about the Panthers, and now we're going to say it about the Hornets. If you would have told us with the season you were going to be playing 1 game out of the 8th seed, one person to help picks in the draft. We've got a ton of first-round picks and second-round picks coming up over the next 6-7 years. We've got salary cap money. They'll trade Bridges, I guarantee it, and bring it. So the future is very bright for the organization. But now that we're here, let's go do some damage.
I think that there is a very good chance that they move up to the 8th seed, and even a equally as good chance as they go all the way to 7 and have 2 home games for the playoffs. 7 will
be tough because Philadelphia's got a 3-game lead on us.
Well, and they got the tiebreaker.
Right. Well, so that's going to be tough. And Miami, I believe, has a tiebreaker over us as well. So Orlando is the one we got to get. But Miami's playing bad right now. They got the doors blown off last night, I think, by Cleveland. I think they lost the game before that. So, the 2 games the Hornets lost, you could expect them to lose those games. You just played two of the best teams in the East, in my opinion.
The problem for us against Miami is that there's a matchup that we can't stop.
Yeah.
And
it's those big dudes, man.
I mean, what he did to us in the last game, and it's a home crowd game for him.
Yep.
He's coming back here to Charlotte. That's the concern I have against Miami is that, we don't have an answer for him.
Yeah. I mean, Orlando is definitely the team that I think we match up the best against. So I wouldn't even mind if we're going to be in the playing game. Let's host Orlando. I would much rather host them than Miami. I think you're totally right. Bam tends to kick our butt. And so does Tyler Hero, who I can't stand, but the dude just lights us up like a Christmas tree. So anyway, this week will be fun if you're a Hornet fan, especially if you're a Duke fan or a fan of Carolina or any of the teams that are not going to be in the Final Four. At least we're going to have great games.
That's a hard pill to swallow.
You're damn right. One thing I do want to ask you before we get out of here, coaching changes. So number one, we'll start with my alma mater, UNC Charlotte. They bring in Wes Miller. I think it's the best hire they've made in any sport in 30 years. The dude, won at UNC Greensboro, went to Cincinnati, and actually rebuilt the program. Didn't get to where he quite wanted to be, but rebuilt it. He comes to Charlotte. He snags Marcus Page away from Carolina, who was their recruiter. So it'll be interesting to see if Charlotte alumni pony up some dollars to see if Marcus can maybe get a couple of these dudes that were going to Carolina to come over here. Sean May, who was also an assistant at Carolina, it sounds like is going to be coming to Charlotte as well. So I want to give Charlotte their props. Now they got to get some money so this dude can go get some players.
Every Burger King in America in Charlotte just said, thank God.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
it to me, both those are great hires, and I hope that they get the money they need.
I mean, are they? I think it's yes.
And Marcus Page is thought upon as a great young coach and recruiter. The one of the 5-star All-Americans that was coming to Carolina is because of Marcus Page. So now I doubt he's going to Carolina. Now, whether he comes to Charlotte or not is going to depend on if they open up a big pocketbook that they haven't had before. So we'll see. I'm slowing down on that, but Marcus Page knows this state very well, and UNC Charlotte has had a hard time recruiting this state. So to me, it's a great hire. So again, we'll see, but I want to give them props because I think it's the best hire they've made in 30 years. Time will tell. NC State, Will Wade, the snake, is something about LSU and these snake coaches that they like, and they steal them in the middle of the night. And Will Wade takes off and bails on NC State. Happy trails, you fat son of a gun. I can't, I liked Will Wade and I thought he was going to do great things at NC State, but he just proved to be exactly who he was. He gets fired from LSU for cheating, and now they're bringing him back because exactly what he was doing is now legal. So, that makes a lot of sense.
I mean, what's the difference between him and Sean Miller? I mean, Sean Miller
for Arizona. Yeah. Who's now at Texas. But
now as a Texas, doing his thing, it's legal now. I mean,
it's legal.
We're doing it then. It's
damn right.
Legal.
I mean, imagine some of the coaches who got burned for cheating that now would be excelling. But
do you blame a guy from going to NC State to LSU, knowing that I can have carte blanche in the pocketbooks to do what I was doing?
It's not that I blame. Like I don't blame anybody for bettering themselves, right? And it's a lot more money. I get all that. I just don't like the way he handled it. Like I just think that there's a way you can handle things and be upfront about it. And I know to some extent you can't be totally transparent, and I understand that. I've been in these situations with contracts that I've been working on with on-air talent and all these things, or if I knew I was firing somebody and I'm working behind. So I
leveraging other people.
Correct. So I understand you can't be totally transparent, but I just don't like the way he handled it. And so happy trails. They're bringing in Justin Gainey, who a lot of people think is a great young mind in basketball. He's been the top assistant coach for Rick Barnes at Tennessee. Rick Barnes had nothing but glowing things to say about him. He played at NC State. I know a lot of the NC State alum like Chris Corciani and those guys, that's the guy they wanted. So they've got him. So hopefully he comes in and kicks some butt. And then the Tar Heels, arguably the number one coaching position in college basketball, and the names being associated with them right now, I'll be interested. Two of them are in the Final Four, in Arizona's coach, Floyd Lloyd. He's a guy that's been mentioned a lot. Dusty May from Michigan is being mentioned a lot. Nate Oates from Alabama is being mentioned a lot. And then Billy Donovan, who I think would be a home run hire if he gets fired from the Bulls or quits the Bulls, could be a guy. And I think any three of those guys would, or any four of those guys would crush it at Carolina if they get one of those four.
I don't know why the Arizona coach would leave the desert to come to a program who is a blue blood program, no doubt about it, but if you're Arizona right now and you look at their history, they've been able to match, any blue blood program out there.
I think they are blue blood.
And they're not quite a blue blood program, but they're the second tier, in my opinion. There's only about 8 blue blood schools, but and they're right there. So if you want to argue that they've had their championships, they've been to Final Fours, they can recruit. It's a basketball school, a basketball environment. But in Carolina is arguably the most dominant program in the history of.
I think it's the top coaching job in college basketball.
Are the expectations so high that if you're a guy like Billy Donovan, who that program would love to have, Carolina would love to have Billy, why would you go to a program where the expectations are so high when you know that if you don't meet those expectations, you're gone?
Well, here's why. Number one, he's getting paid. He's already been paid a lot of money through his college career when he won back-to-back national championships at Florida. He's been paid a ton of money in the pros, and now the Bulls are paying him a ton of money.
I think he loses legacy if he goes to Carolina and doesn't win the championship.
I just don't see him not. I mean, I don't know about championship because that's a hard thing to predict.
You're
totally right. You're totally right. But number one, I think he would have a hell of a chance to do it. Number two, and you know this, if you're a guy like Billy Donovan, who's an extreme competitor, who grew up playing and coaching under Rick Pitino, who's won back-to-back national championships, you haven't done crap in the NBA. So getting back to college, to me anyway, that challenge is something that you would fight to get that chance because you're a competitor and you'd want to. And to do it at Carolina is the biggest stage in college basketball. So to me, he's the guy. And I'll be very surprised if he doesn't take the job.
I'm not saying that these guys shy away from challenges or they're going to back down from what's going on in college basketball, but Duke right next door is, with what Scheyer is doing, is dominating most teams right now, most in the country, and what he's able to do.
Well, he's dominating North Carolina, who's 8 miles away, and that had a huge factor in Hubert getting fired.
Davis is getting let go.
Yep.
One of the big reasons. The other one is, the comeback where everybody's going to try to compare Duke's loss, and
VCU
to VCU with what they did, and with Carolina, and okay, maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
Well, at least Carolina can say we didn't have our best player and maybe one of the best players, one of the best players.
The other people could say, well, this was a Elite Eight game. That team is much better than VCU.
Correct.
So there's going to be the pros and cons with that. But the reality of it is that there's going to be some fans right now that are starting to question, even Scheyer at Duke, right? Because even though he's doing a great job, he's losing big games because a lot of people are going to say coaching decisions. Because I'll argue if Coach K was still coaching this team or last year's team, we'd be hanging 2 banners. Or at least we'd be in the national championship game. And last year, I think we'd have hung the banner for sure, beating Florida. This year, Arizona, Michigan are just really damn good, and that would be a toss-up. But we'd be there. We wouldn't have lost this game.
Yeah,
Coach K was on this team.
I would agree, and I think that all comes down to experience.
Right?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
That's that. If people are going to start saying, "Is he the right guy? Does he need more veteran, presence on the bench?" If Coach K was coaching this team, we wouldn't have lost those games. Cooper Flagg would have had a championship. This year's team maybe not beat Arizona.
We wouldn't have lost last night.
We wouldn't have lost last night, and we wouldn't have lost in the Final Four. We'd be in the championship game.
But again, if you had Coach K in his 4th year of coaching, I think we would have lost. That's my point. Is like I think Shirer's done a great job, and I just think he just needs more experience. And I think he's shown that he learned. Just like Canales.
My point to what you're saying. I'm not disagreeing with what you just said. The patience of expectations for the winningest programs in college basketball aren't going to be patient.
No, you got basically 2 years.
Hubert Davis was only in his 5th year.
Yeah, you get 2 years basically.
You get 2 years, right? 3 years.
2 or 3 years.
Scheyer has done, an incredible job, but at North Carolina, I mean, Hubert wasn't terrible. He wasn't a terrible coach. He had his team in Final Fours and in the championship game within his, tenure there. And it wasn't only but 5 years. So, if we're going to sit there and say that he's gone in 5 years and we have Scheyer in 4, or, the amount of time he's been there, there's going to be starting some buzz with Duke fans. But North Carolina, their expectations are going to be the coach that they hire. There better be in the championship next year.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I agree. I think within 2 years.
That is a difficult reality.
That's why I think Billy Donovan is a perfect hire, because
for them, yes.
For them.
But for him,
no, for him.
Those are ridiculous expectations.
But you know what? He's on the Bulls now. He's done nothing in the NBA. So why not go back to college with the biggest coaching job in college? And
because he could lose his legacy.
I don't think he could. I think he's still going to be looked upon as a great coach. I think if he fails,
he goes to Carolina, and
Bill Belichick
and Duke is still wearing him out with Scheyer and recruiting these one and done players, these high school kids, right? And Donovan goes to Carolina and doesn't beat Duke and doesn't get his team to the Final Four within 2 years. He will lose his legacy.
I disagree. I mean, is Bill Belichick going to lose his legacy because he sucked? I disagree.
He's absolutely taking a hit.
If you ask anybody,
he is absolutely.
I'm not going to say
taking.
I'm not going to say he ain't taking a hit.
But Billy Donovan isn't considered the greatest of all time.
I agree with you. But what I'm saying
Bill
is,
Belichick
people are not going to forget. He's still going to go to Florida and be a hero every time he goes into a restaurant or every time he goes on campus. His legacy is untarnished.
Great
well, I don't think he gives a damn about what.
Well, I mean, you don't know that.
I think that he.
You have no idea.
I also think that he thinks that I'm a great coach and I'll go win. I will be in the Final Four within 2 years. I don't think he's scared.
You can't make that argument either. You don't know what he thinks.
I know that the way he coaches basketball, I don't think he's scared.
Is it interesting to think, because as a coach or a person in that situation, put yourself into that situation.
I'm not worried about failing, and I don't think he's the kind of guy that is either. I've never, in one thing I've ever done, worried about failing. And I've failed a bunch, but I've never went into it going, oh my God, what if I fail?
There's better jobs and better opportunities where you have to take to put yourself in position.
There's no better job. Carolina, you're going to get all the badass players. You got as much money as anybody. You're the number one coaching job in the country when it comes to college basketball. They have a great tradition. There's no better job to do it at. Matter of fact, you could argue it'd be easier to win there if you're a damn good coach that gets players. Look what Rick Pitino has done at St. John's. They've not been in the tournament, I think, since 1990 something. So, Pitino could have thought the same thing. Me going to St. John's. No, he went in there going, you know what? I'm freaking Rick Pitino, and I'm going to be the king of freaking New York in 2-3 years. And he is. And I think Billy Donovan would approach it the same way, but we'll see. And the other guys, May and Lloyd, those guys, that I would tend to agree with you a little more, because they can at least go, I've got it made at Arizona. I'm gonna be a hero here the rest of my career. Dusty May at Michigan. That I would agree with you a bit more. With Billy Donovan, he's leaving the Chicago Bulls. I don't think the risk is really there.
Why wouldn't he want to take that same mindset to what he's doing in Chicago, or to bring to Chicago with where he's at? If he can't do it there, what makes you think all of a sudden he's going to turn that around at UNC?
NBA and college are totally different things.
But he has, if you're a great coach,
at UNC, he's going to get pretty much whatever players he wants if he does the way he always did.
Hold on. College basketball and the NBA are going to mirror each other in the next couple of years.
But my point is, the Chicago Bulls can't go out and handpick guys they want and give them money. You can't do it. Carolina, he will be able to go handpick and say, all right, I want this guy, give him 10 million or 8 million or 4, whatever it is. So I just think it's a perfect fit.
It's easier to do that at Carolina.
Yeah, because you can go handpick your guys. Where at the Bulls, you can't go, okay, I want Greek Freak. We'll give him 30. You can't do it. It's not like Major League Baseball where you can do that pretty much. So that'll be interesting to see what happens with that. And I would think, with the NBA being over in 2 weeks, Carolina's probably gonna get something figured out. That you got 2 of the coaches they're talking to in the Final Four, so hopefully in the next 2 or 3 weeks they'll get that figured out. But congrats to NC State on getting Gainey and Charlotte on getting Wes Miller. Everybody enjoy your week. We got a great Final Four. I hope all the games are as good as a Duke UConn game, because now that we don't have a dog in the fight, I'm just gonna be root for whoever I bet on and for them to come down to the wire unless I land points.
I hope UConn wins.
It would be great. It would be great.
I think that's the only chance to upset whoever Michigan or whoever wins between that game.
Well, we don't have. We'll jump into this next time, but that's one of the things I was going to say is that if Hurley wins this, that's 3 of the last 4. Where does that put him in history? Because my God, that's unbelievable.
I bet on him before the season.
Yeah, you were smart. I've got to bet on Arizona, so
bet on Arizona as well.
That's what I'll be
Arizona and UConn. If they make it, I'm guaranteed to win my preseason bet.
Yeah.
On taking UConn at plus 2,800. And then Arizona was not that high nearly. They're like plus 1,200 or something like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, at least if those 2 get there, you ain't losing.
I got a chance.
You got a chance.
Well, I'm definitely going to win. More than a chance.
All right, let's hope for a 3-0 week from the Hornets. Everybody have a great week. We'll see you next week.